My name is Terry Carter, and I am at Somerton Meeting House in Suffolk, Virginia, and I'm here to talk about one aspect of the rich diversity of faith in Tidewater, Virginia. Tidewater is the area in far east of Virginia. The story of the Christian church in Virginia is dominated by the Anglican Church. However, there were other branches of the Protestant faith, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Nansemond and Norfolk counties. And one of the Protestant groups in those two counties during the colonial period were the Quakers, or the Society of Friends. In 1643, the Virginia Assembly had enacted laws against Puritans as the first group of dissenters that came up against the Anglican tradition. But in 1658, they ordered the expulsion of all Quakers in an attempt to control what it saw as both heresy and sedition. And this was during the time period of the English Civil War, and loyalties back and forth between the crown and the Protestants went back and forth and caused a great deal of animosity in a number of the different colonies. The persecution of all dissenters reached a peak in 1662 under Governor Francis Morrison. They passed a law requiring all citizens to attend the Anglican Church, and they listed heavy fines and very severe penalties, including imprisonment and public whippings. Because of the persecution, we know that there were Quaker missionaries in Nansemond County as early as 1662. One of them was a man named George Wilson. George Wilson had been a soldier. He came to the Quaker faith in England and went to prison there for his faith. He originally tried to settle in Massachusetts, but they expelled him. He came to Virginia by 1662, and we know this because he was arrested by the authorities. While he was in prison, he was able to get a hold of paper and pen and write several letters. In his letters, he put forth a legal defense, described the persecution of the Quakers, and made a plea for the authorities to consider the fate of their souls when they persecuted others. He started writing in confinement in an area of Nansemond County called Chuckatuck. His last works will be written from the jail in Jamestown, where he will die. We also know that George Fox, the founder of the Society of Friends, visited the area and met with the Friends here at Somerton. In his journal on November 19th, 1672, he wrote, "And on the 19th day we passed about 30 miles through the woods towards Carolina, and a flashy and wet way. And at the night we came to a place called Somerton, to a poor house, and there we found a woman that had a sense of God, and most of us lay by the fire all the night, and it was very cold." We also know that Fox met with people in Norfolk County, for he writes on the 19th, this time of December, on the 19th day, we passed up a branch of the Elizabeth River, and at night came to a friend's house whose name is John Porter, when we had rode about 10 miles. And on the 22nd day, we had a meeting. On the 23rd day, we had passed to a friend's house, being the farthest in Virginia. The 24th day, we passed by water about 12 miles up the Elizabeth River to a friend's house. And on the 25th day, we passed by water 6 miles to a friend's house called Thomas Good, where we had service. And there in this county, they said the high sheriff had an order to take me. But I met him by chance, and he took me by the hand and was very civil and courteous. And on the 30th day, we passed towards Maryland and had a very great storm. And being very much wet, we got to land and went about 2 miles to a house at Willoughby's Point, where we lodged all that night. Finally, in 1724, the inimitable William Byrd began his journey to determine the boundary between Virginia and North Carolina, which he chronicled in The History of the Dividing Line. In this classic text, he describes his company's progress out of the Dismal Swamp, moving on a mostly western track. In our journey, we remarked that the north side of this great Dismal Swamp lies higher than either the east or the west, nor were the approaches to it so full of sunken grounds. We passed by no less than 2 Quaker meeting houses, one of which had an awkward ornament on the end of it that seemed to ape a steeple. I must own I expected no such piece of foppery from a sect of so much outside simplicity. As a son of the Church of England, he goes on to comment on the Society of Friends and the failures of his own church. That persuasion, the Quakers, prevails much in the lower end of Nansemond County, for want of ministers to pilot the people a decenter way to heaven. The Somerton Meeting House here in Suffolk, Virginia, is still in use today as a house of worship for modern people of the Quaker faith. It is the oldest active Quaker meeting house in Virginia. Thank you.